Imagine waking up tomorrow to breaking news. China has vanished. Not just from your social media feed, actually gone from the planet. 1.4 billion people, 3.7 million square miles, thousands of factories, just poof, disappeared overnight. Sounds like science fiction, right? But this thought experiment reveals just how interconnected our world really is. So, let's dive in. Chapter 01. The World's Factory Shutdown. Here's a mind-blowing fact. China produces about 30% of all manufactured goods globally. That's more than the United States, Japan, and Germany combined. Take a second to look at your phone. Maybe it's an iPhone or a Samsung. Regardless of what the brand says, chances are it was assembled in China. The iPhone in your hand, designed in California but made in places like Zhengzhou, nicknamed iPhone City, where over 200,000 workers assemble these devices around the clock. If China vanishes, so does iPhone City. No new phones, no chargers, no replacement parts. And it's not just phones. China produces half of the world's steel, almost 1/3 of all clothing, 80% of air conditioners, 70% of mobile phones, 60% of shoes. You know that Made in China label you see everywhere? There's a reason for that. With the world's factories suddenly gone, what would happen to the prices of everyday items? Let's explore that in the next chapter. Chapter 2. Prices go through the roof. Remember during COVID when Chinese factories temporarily shut down? Global supply chains went haywire. A single shipping container that normally cost $2,000 suddenly jumped to over $20,000. Car prices skyrocketed because manufacturers couldn't get computer chips. People waited months for furniture deliveries. Now imagine that, but permanent and far worse. Without China's manufacturing capacity, prices for everyday items would explode overnight. And here's the scary part. Unlike temporary disruptions, we'd have no timeline for recovery. The world would need to build entirely new manufacturing ecosystems from scratch. These skyrocketing prices would devastate economies worldwide. But which countries would feel the pain most acutely? Let's find out. Chapter 3. Who loses the most? Australia might take the biggest immediate hit. Over 40% of their exports go to China, with iron ore alone bringing in over $100 billion annually. Without China, Australia's mining towns become ghost towns overnight. Germany's auto industry would crumble. Volkswagen sells 40% of its cars to Chinese customers. BMW and Mercedes aren't far behind. African nations that have received billions in Chinese infrastructure investments would see incomplete highways, railways, and ports. Projects freeze. Development stalls. Even the United States, despite political tensions with China, would feel severe pain. American farmers export billions in soybeans, pork, and other agricultural products to China annually. That market vanishes instantly. But here's a question. Would any countries actually benefit from China's disappearance? Let's examine the potential winners. Chapter 4. The potential winners. India would likely be the biggest beneficiary. Already positioning itself as the next China, India has the population and growing manufacturing base to potentially fill the void, eventually. But ramping up would take years, not months. Vietnam, Mexico, and Indonesia could also accelerate their manufacturing growth. They've already been receiving factories relocating from China due to rising Chinese wages. The United States and Europe might see some manufacturing return to their shores, creating jobs. But consumers would pay significantly higher prices for goods previously made cheaply in China. While some countries might eventually adapt and even thrive, there's one critical resource problem that few people understand. What happens when the world's primary supplier of rare earth elements vanishes? Let's dive deeper. Chapter 5. The rare earth problem. Here's something most people don't realize. China controls over 60% of global rare earth production and refining. What are rare earths, you might ask? They're those special metals with weird names like neodymium and dysprosium that are essential for smartphones, electric vehicles, wind turbines, and military equipment. Without Chinese rare earths, the green energy transition screeches to a halt. Electric car production plummets. Solar panel costs skyrocket. Even national defense systems dependent on these materials would be compromised. Countries like the US have rare earth deposits, but developing mines and processing facilities takes years. In the meantime, tech innovation stalls. Beyond smartphones and electric vehicles, there's something even more essential at stake. What would happen to your medicine cabinet if China disappeared? Chapter 6. The Medicine Cabinet Crisis. Need antibiotics, pain relievers, heart medication? Good luck finding them. Roughly 80% of active pharmaceutical ingredients used in American drugs come from China and India, with China being the dominant supplier. Without China, global medicine cabinets would quickly empty. Hospitals would ration critical medications. Chronic disease management becomes a nightmare. Simple infections could once again become life-threatening. With all these catastrophic effects, could there be at least one silver lining to China's disappearance? What about climate change? The answer isn't as straightforward as you might think. Chapter 7. Climate change complications. Here's where things get interesting. China produces nearly 30% of global carbon emissions. So wouldn't its disappearance be good for climate change? Not so fast. China is also the world's largest producer of solar panels, the biggest investor in renewable energy, the leading manufacturer of electric vehicles and batteries. Without China, green energy becomes more expensive and less available. Climate goals become harder to achieve, not easier. It's a complicated picture. Less immediate pollution, but potentially slower progress on long-term solutions. But wait, couldn't the rest of the world simply step up and replace China's manufacturing capacity? It's time to examine the replacement question. Chapter 8. The replacement question. Couldn't other countries just step up? I hear you asking. Not quickly. China has a workforce of over 700 million people, decades of manufacturing expertise, sophisticated logistics networks, modern ports, railways, and factories. Building comparable capacity elsewhere would take a decade or more. In the meantime, the global economy would likely face a severe, prolonged depression. Beyond economic concerns, China's sudden absence would completely reshape global politics. Who would fill the power vacuum, and what would it mean for international relations? Chapter 9. Geopolitical Power Vacuum. With China gone, international power dynamics radically shift overnight. The United States would remain the sole superpower but face enormous economic challenges. Russia might become more assertive in Asia. India could accelerate its rise as a global power. Taiwan's security situation would dramatically improve, though its economy, ironically, would suffer due to its trade ties with mainland China. Military tensions in the South China Sea would evaporate, but new conflicts could emerge as nations race to fill the vacuum China leaves behind. And finally, there's something we haven't even touched on yet. Something perhaps less quantifiable, but equally profound. What would we lose culturally if China simply vanished? Let's reflect on this in our final chapter. Chapter 10. Cultural Impact. We'd also lose 5,000 years of Chinese culture and innovation, from traditional medicine to cuisine that shapes global food scenes. No more kung fu movies. No more Chinese New Year celebrations lighting up cities worldwide. No more pandas. I mean, they're native to China after all. Think about how many cultural touchpoints would simply vanish. The Great Wall, Forbidden City, Terracotta Army, all gone in an instant. So, there you have it. Could we survive without China? Technically, yes. Humanity would adapt. New manufacturing centers would eventually emerge. Supply chains would reconfigure. But the transition would be brutal. We'd face years of shortages, inflated prices, and economic hardship. Countless lives would be affected as industries collapse and rebuild. The reality is that our world depends on China, just as China depends on the rest of the world. Our economies, supply chains, and futures are deeply intertwined, for better or worse. What do you think? How would your life change if China disappeared tomorrow? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this thought experiment sparked your curiosity, you'll definitely want to check out my video, Do We Really Need Taxes?, where I break down the surprising role taxation plays in modern society. Hit that subscribe button to join our community of deep thinkers, and give this video a thumbs up if it made you see the world a little differently today. Until next time, keep questioning everything.